All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, or to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen like a computer. All right. So let's see here. Doesn't look like we have any new questions at the moment. So if you got a question, now's a great time to ask because you'll get answered pretty quickly here because we don't have any questions in there at the moment. No big deal if you don't have any questions, but might get pretty boring in here, quiet if we don't have any questions. Make sure this was. I thought I made sure this was set up correctly. I just want to make sure. Thought that I double checked last time. Bear with me here. Today is the 7th. Yes. All right. Yeah, it looks like test. All right. So we are good to go. We are live. We just don't have any questions. No big deal. Hopefully, everybody's having a good Thursday. All right, we got one from Brian J. It says, "Hi Q, any good tips for keeping my head down and not looking up?" Well, I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I don't have any tips because I don't really believe that you have to keep your head down. So the head needs to come up. I got my club here, right? The head needs to come up. So what we don't want to do is that, right? We want the head to come up, right? One thing, I would say is you can say try to watch the club hit the ball and then release the head after that. Right? Go ahead and let that head come up and around after that. So that's really the best tip I can give you is to watch the club hit the ball and then let your body come through. Right? You don't want to watch the club hit the ball and be like this. Stay there. Watch that club hit the ball and then come up. If you do that, you'll be in good shape. But you want the head to release and come up though, so that way you can let all the momentum go. If you don't, it'll really slow you down, and you'll lose a lot of speed, and you won't hit the ball as far. And that's very important to playing good golf is hitting the ball far. All right, keep the questions coming. If you're just hopping on the office hours, I'm just waiting for questions to be asked. So if you got questions, great time to ask. If not, no big deal. All right. So Dan S says, have you tried the Click Stick 7-iron and/or new driver version? If so, what do you think of them for the release point click indicator? I have not tried them, but I think we. I don't. I'm not a big fan of training aids that do that because it doesn't really attack the root cause of the problem. Like, so for example, if you are someone that in a practice swing, you can get the club to release perfectly, right? When you, because this is what I get all the time, is where people ask me, hey, in a practice swing, I can make my golf swing look beautiful, but then when the ball is there, it looks terrible, right? Or I don't do what I'm trying to do, or whatever it is. And usually, almost always, the reason is because you're when the ball is there, you are making adjustments or compensations, if you will, in your swing to get the ball to go in the direction that you're trying to get it to go. All right. So, a lot of people can get shaft lean and release the club out in front in a practice swing, but then the moment the ball is there, they cannot do it. And it's usually because of a couple of reasons. So, one is either the club, this is the most common one, the club face is open, right? So, if you look more closely at your practice swings, you'll usually see that the club face is open. And a good way to kind of see this, I think I have a glove down here. Yeah, I do. All right. So a good way to kind of see this, put your golf glove on and video your swing. The reason why I say put a golf glove on is because it'll make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. So the club head's moving pretty fast at impact. So it's hard to see the direction the club face is pointing. So a lot of times you want to look at the hands, and the hands will be an indication of where the club face is pointing, because unless you're like re-gripping the club at the top and the face is like changing directions in relationship to your hand, it's going to stay relatively in the same direction in relationship to your hand. All right. So at address, we're going to presume that that club face is square, right? So what you can do is you can kind of look at what your lead wrist looks like at address and the direction the emblem of your glove is pointing. So if you were to look at my swing on video from face on, you would see a small amount of the emblem of the glove at address, right? Ideally, you would see the same amount of the emblem of the glove at impact, very close to the same amount, right? So basically, you'd want to kind of see that. So that would be like a square club face, right? And you'd see the same amount. But what you will typically see when you video your swing, you video a practice swing, and you're getting all the shaft lean, usually what you're going to see is, let's say you can see a small amount of the emblem of the glove at address, but then you get to impact, and it's like this. Now you can see a lot of the emblem of my glove. Look at my club face. It's wide open, right? I would hit this ball down the first baseline, right? You can imagine like how far, I mean, that's really hitting the ball to the right for me, right? Or for anybody, right? That's really getting the ball to start too much to the right. So intuitively, you're not going to let yourself do that. So when the ball is there, you make compensations so that way you can release it early to square up the face, right? You're not going to let yourself release it later and have that face open. So you have to get the face more closed as you're coming down to be able to get the release in the shaft length. So I feel like those training aids, to me, like if you don't understand what's going on, they're just really frustrating because you do the click thing, right? You do the release thing, right? But the club face is wide open, right? And you don't even realize it. Then you go to hit the ball and you're just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. You can do it. It's just a matter of you have to understand what's going on. So I'm not a big fan of the release trainers right now. If you understand what's going on and then you realize like, okay, that's how I need to release the club. Now, how do I get the face square, right? Well, maybe I'll try using a stronger grip, or I'll try using stronger wrist angles when I come out. So bowing the wrist, the lead wrist, and extending back the trail wrist as I'm coming down. That will allow me to get the face square at impact with the release more up front. So you have to kind of understand what's going on to be able to use those. And of course, I've never seen any of these training aids actually give you the the training to do that. The only one that I've ever seen that does it is the impact snap. Now this has its flaws too. You're not able to hit a ball with it, right? But I think it can help you to understand that. So the impact snap, if you're not familiar, this is invented several years ago, a long time ago, actually. I haven't talked about it in a long time because it's just been so many newer and different training aids. But basically what it does is it's got the release in it, right? Right. So I'm getting where that's releasing, but it also is training your wrist angles at the same time. So basically what we want to do is we want to get this ball to be resting on your arm as you're coming through contact. You can see how if I'm like this, that's square. And then I come into impact, it's still square. Well, look at this. But if it's not square, this is going to be off of that ball is going to be off of my arm. And that's how most people come through contact, is basically that ball would be off the arm. So we would either need to get the hands on here stronger, right? So that way we're coming in and we're more like this and it's on my arm, and or we need to get the wrist angles stronger, right? When I'm doing this to get that face square in the hands in front, right? This would be the flaws with this is that you can't hit a ball with this, right? They do have a little attachment that shows like the club face, but you're still not really able to. It's just to kind of show you to visualize the club face. It's not really, doing that. You can hit the ball with both of those. Yeah. So I've never used it. So if it's doing that, I think it can be useful. But I've never used it, to be honest with you. I don't even know what you're talking about. But I know I've seen training aids that do like what this does, where it gives you that little snap when it releases, and you want to hear that kind of out here. But a lot of them don't address the root cause as to why you're not able to do that when the ball is there, right? So if it's doing that, then that's great. But if it's not, then it's not really. It's just going to make you frustrated because you're going to be able to do it with the training aid, but not when the actual ball is there and you're hitting a ball. All right, keep questions coming. We got plenty of time here. So Roy K says, "Is effortless power a myth? If not, how do we develop it?" Um, well, I mean, effort is really a feel. So I can understand how some people might feel like they have effortless power, and I don't think that they're lying. But it's really just a feel. It's relative to the golfer, right? Um, Most of the time, though, I would say, if I had to choose, is it a myth or is it not? I would say it's more of a myth than anything else. Um, you are absolutely have to put effort in, but effort is your it's a very gray area. It's a very fickle word, right? What is effort? Like if I hit a ball, like I would say it's tough. Like, are you putting in effort when you're putting? Is that effortless? I mean, you're hitting with a lot less. You're putting in a lot less effort than you would with a driver, right? So I don't even like the term effortless power because it's just too. It's not really. You're absolutely putting in some sort of effort. It's not like you can just stand here and then zero effort, because that's what effortless means, right? And then hit the ball. So I would say it's a myth. But again, it's a feel. So if someone says they feel like they have effortless power, it probably just means that they've maybe changed, they've worked on something and they've changed their swing where it feels like they're getting more power with less effort, right? The way that you develop an effortless swing would be to make sure that you have a big turn and make sure that you are lagging the club in some way, right? And then I would also say tempo. Tempo and rhythm have a big part of effortless, right? Because if you feel really quick, it's not gonna feel effortless, right? So in reality, effortless it really isn't a thing if you're living in reality, but it can kind of feel like that if you had a swing where you put in you were swinging basically as hard as you can and it wasn't going very far, and then you went to where you got a bigger turn, and then because imagine how much effort it would take to create club head speed from here, right? It would take a ton of effort, right? And now if I turn my shoulders from that position, I can hit the ball a lot farther and feel like it's less effort, but it's not effortless, right? You're definitely putting in effort. So I think that's where that term kind of comes from, the effortless power thing. It's more like, okay, are you doing things are you giving it everything you got, and you're not really getting much distance? Like your buddies are out driving you, they're looking like they're putting in less effort, right? And you're putting in all the effort. You're trying to hit that ball as hard as you can, and you're still not getting anywhere near where they're hitting. And then you make adjustments to your swing. You get a bigger turn. You get the club to lag and whip through contact. And you have the club coming down on the appropriate path to the ball, right? And now you're putting in less effort and you're getting just as much distance, if not more, than your buddies are, right? And some people might say, oh, that's effortless power, but in reality, you're still putting in effort, right? So I would say that's kind of where that comes from. But if you want to get if you want to get more distance, I'd highly recommend checking out our 20-minute distance fix. That's the course that's going to get you that power. But you also, when you're going through the course, you need to put in max effort so that way you can train your neurological system to fire faster. That's called neural adaptation. Clay talks about it in the 20-minute distance fix. But if you get a bigger turn, you get lag, you do neural adaptation. So for example, let me talk about neural adaptation real quick. So I've gone through the 20-minute distance fix. I went through it, as Clay was kind of developing, and I was like consulting, helping him with it. It's I went through it. I started at like 110 miles an hour, and I got up to 123 miles an hour, right? Well, because I went through the course and I was giving max effort in the practice, right? I trained my neurological system to fire faster. So now, my max speed was 123. That was everything I got. The best speed that I had at that time. But my playing speed went up to 117, 118, and it felt like the same amount of effort, right? It's still not effortless. It just felt like the same amount of effort, right? So my body had adapted along with the training, the technique tweaks that I already had a pretty good turn. I was already doing a lot of the things that decently that were in there, but I lengthened my swing a little bit. I got a little bit more lag. I really, one of the main things for me is using the ground better, using my momentum and using vertical forces a little bit better, and then going all out effort. That training got to where when several weeks later, 117, 118 was my playing speed, and that felt like the same amount of effort that I put in before because my body had adapted to doing that so many times. So if you want to check it, you really want to work on getting more club head speed. The way to do it is to work through that 20-minute distance fix. To get to that course, click the instruction tab, and then from the drop down, you can click the 20-minute distance fix from there. All right, let's keep going. So Dan S says, I've been a member here for a long time, hitting the ball well, though never as long as I like. I'm 65 most drives in the 240s range in level ground, 120-ish for pitching wedge, probably 10-ish handicap, though I rarely keep score, but I've added 40 to 60 yards And I'm hitting fades and draws and on comment. He means on command with it seems like less effort thanks mainly to the site. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Dan. Glad it's helped. Yeah, if you want to gain more distance, I'd highly recommend checking out that 20-minute distance fix if you haven't already. And really, if you're someone you want to hit the ball farther, you don't work through that course once. You work through it until basically you're not getting anything out of it anymore. And then at that point, I would try to up the volume because just like with like weightlifting, right? If you lift a weight and at first it feels very heavy and then you get stronger, right? And then it feels very light, right? Well, once it starts to feel very light, it's not really doing much for you, right? It's doing very minimal amount. Your strength gains are going to kind of plateau. It's very similar when doing speed training, right? If your stimulus, the stimulus that the volume that we have so far in the 20-minute distance fix is two range sessions, right? So two separate days where you do 20 swings, right? And then there's one home session, right? You can do that home session at the range as well. It's not required. We just wanted to give people a way to work on it at home as well. But that's not a ton. In the very beginning, that's a good amount, right? But if you're going through that, you may want to up the volume a little bit, just like you would for weight training. If I wanted to, if I got to a certain point where I wasn't really like I was plateauing, I wasn't making any gains, any strength gains, I maybe try to up the volume a little bit. So now you still want to keep appropriate amount of rest. So what I might do is I might go instead of 20 swings, I might go 30 swings, right? 30 swings on each one of them. And maybe I still want to have a day of rest in between. And then, maybe add in a day down the road. If that doesn't get, now I might go to 40 swings. So it's just about, adding more volume once you get to that point. But I would get to where you're not getting anything out of it. Basically, you go through the whole thing and you ended at the same number that you started at. Dana says, I've been up to 108, but when I get back, I rarely get back to 102, but probably average 97. Yeah, it's pretty normal, right? So like I said, I went through the course. I started at 110. I got to where my max was 123. My playing speed was like 117, 118, right? So that's, that's kind of what, pretty normal. So that's pretty similar to what it sounds like for you. Like the max was 108, right? And then your playing speed might be, more in the range of 97 to 102 or something like that. All right, I got about 30 minutes left here if we have any more questions. So Dan S says, recently switched to a broomstick putter. Ever use one? If so, any tips? I'm better with it. I have not used a broomstick putter. So when it comes to putting, it really just comes down to four things, in my opinion. And obviously, there's it can branch down from these four things, but it's line, speed, read, and mentality. Right. So when I say line, what I'm talking about is basically hitting it on the right line. Now, there's lots of things that go into that, right? So one thing that goes into it, are you seeing the right line, right? And then are you hitting it on the right line? If you're not seeing the right line, why are you not seeing the right line? So finding where your eyes need to be over the ball to see the right line, and so on and so forth. Those sorts of things. The setup that you need to be able to see the right line. And then if you're not hitting on the right line, then why is it? Right? Is it because you're coming in and the face is open, it's closed? Are you coming in and the path of the club is too much into out, too much out to in? Are you not hitting it in the middle of the putter face, right? Not hitting in the sweet spot. That can make the ball go offline, right? So there's lots of things that go into that, but line, right? That's number one. Then speed, right? So that's are you hitting the ball with the proper amount of energy to get it to roll the distance that you want, right? So again, there's a lot that goes into that, right? Part of it is are you hitting it in the middle of the face, right? If you don't hit it in the middle of the face, it's not going to roll the same distance, right? Some of it is are you putting a good roll on it, right? Are you hitting down on it and bouncing the ball into the ground? Are you hitting up on it or hitting it with too much loft and the ball's getting backspin and then it's skidding, right? That all goes into hitting it in the right speed. Is your feel for the right speed? You just need to train the right feel of developing the feel of the skill of rolling at the right distance, right? It could be that. So that's what goes into it. Read. Are you able to read the greens well, right? Do you have an idea of where it's going to break, how much it's going to break, uphill, downhill, that sort of thing? That's a skill, right? And then mentality, right? So that's basically the mental part of putting. It's a big part of it, right? You can have all of those things really well, but if your mentality is off, you're probably not going to make a lot of putts. So generally, the mentality that you want to have with every putt is you want to be able to see, visualize what's happening in your mind. It's like Tiger's dad told him. He told him to putt to the picture, right? So what he would do is he'd visualize it in his mind. That'd be the picture, and then he would try to kind of recreate that with the stroke. And then obviously in that visualization, you're seeing the ball go in. You're seeing the ball roll on the ground and then drop in the hole. You're seeing how much it's breaking, the speed that it's going at, right? You're seeing all these things, and then you putt to that picture. You need to feel or have the mentality that you're going to make every single putt that you're going to look at, even though you're going to miss most of your putts. You know what I mean? And then still have that mentality with everyone. So I don't know, and I'm guilty of this myself. I play with a lot of people, and one thing that you probably noticed this amongst yourself or amongst your buddies. Let's say they got like a 5-6 footer for par on the first hole, right? If they make that putt, a lot of times they'll putt pretty well all day, pretty solid all day. If they miss that putt, a lot of times they don't putt well the rest of the day. They putt terrible, right? And it's not necessarily because they're a good putter or a bad putter. I think it has a lot to do with the mentality, right? They missed a putt that they felt they should have made, and then they kind of think about it. But we have to understand, like, the percentages, right? If you have a 5-foot putt, the best players in the world are going to make that 80% of the time. There's a 20% of the time that they miss too, right? So it's very normal to miss a 5-foot putt. And for an amateur golfer, it might be 60 to 70% of the time that you can expect to kind of make that putt. But the elite putters make it 80% of the time. So the same thing for you have a 25 footer, right? Not sure what the make rate is on that, but I'm guessing it's definitely single digits, right? It's probably like 7, maybe 7%, 5%, something like that. I don't know the exact numbers and the best putters in the world, but if you miss that's fine. In fact, I don't even really try to make 25 footers. I know that might seem weird. Like, shouldn't you try to make all the putts? But I feel I'm rolling it as if I'm going to make it. But if it doesn't go in, I'm not expecting it to go in, right? And that's kind of the mentality. I'm going to stroke it like I feel like I'm going to make it. I see it going in, but then I just know in my mind that it's probably not going to go in. And as long as it's within 3 feet, I'm happy because I got a 2-putt. I avoided a 3-putt, right? So, and that's really what that's about when you get with those lag putts. It's really more about avoiding 3 putts and making sure you get your 2-putt. I find a lot of people get too aggressive on those, on those 25, 30, 40 footers, and they end up rolling it way by the hole. And now they got like a 8, 9 footer coming back for par. You might make some of those, but you're going to miss those majority of the time, right? 8 feet, you're less than 50%. So yeah, that's, the best players are less than 50%. So you don't want to put yourself in that situation. So that's really what it comes down to. That's the tips that I have for putting, whether you are using a broomstick or using a normal putter or using anything. That's what it comes down to. Everything that you do with your putting should be to improve those 4 aspects of it. Those are the 4 main things. That's really what it comes down to getting good at anything, is to understand what the most important things are to be good at whatever it is. And then everything you do is to improve those. So that's putting. Let's talk about since nobody's got any questions. Let me double check here. Make sure we don't have any questions before I. Yeah, so no new questions as of yet. We got about 20 minutes left here. So what are the most important things when it comes to hitting like an approach shot, like an iron shot? What are the most important things, right? And it would be cool if I had like a classroom of people and I would call on people because I guarantee you there's going to be some people they'll raise their hand and they'll be like, keeping your left arm straight or not moving your head, keeping your head still or weight shift or stuff like that. Everything, all of those things, those are technical pieces of the swing that can help, but also aren't the most important things. There are players throughout history who, pretty much every good golfer does not keep their head dead still. Now, no good golfer has excessive head movement, right? But all the best golfers in the world have head movement, right? There are tons of great elite golfers that do not keep their left arm straight, right? Those are just a couple that I picked out, but those are ones that I imagine would be hurt. Here are the 5 things, right? Hitting the ground in the right place, right? If we hit the ground behind the ball, it's going to typically be a chunk. That's not going to be a good shot. If I don't hit the ground, unless I just have a lie where the ball's sitting up on the grass like it's on a tee, probably not going to be a good shot. It's going to be thin. It's not going to be solid anyway. Now it might end up, the result might be okay, right? Because you can get away with hitting thin shots oftentimes. Or hitting the ground too far in front, right? That could result in a topping the ball, so on and so forth. So hitting the ground in the right spot, hitting the middle of the club face, the center of the club face. Also very important. That's the second thing. The third thing is having the club face in the proper direction at impact, aka your face angle. If you want to talk about like the TrackMan terms, right? Having the club face pointing in the right direction at impact. Generally, we want it pointed in the direction of the target. Now, obviously, if you're trying to hit draws and fades, but we want that to be relatively close to neutral, close to 0, right? The best players in the world are 3 or 4 degrees away from neutral, no more than 3 or 4 degrees away from neutral, right? Most of them are 0 to 2 degrees when they're hitting the shot that they're wanting to hit. Club path, right? So is the club working in the right direction through contact, right? So this, you can think of this as over the top or too shallow, right? I want my club to be working down the proper path. Again, I want that to be fairly neutral. The best golfers in the world, again, 3 or 4 degrees, are usually no more than 3 or 4 degrees. Now, if they're trying to put a ton of spin on it and stuff like, or try to put a curve on it, that's one thing, right? But generally, they're not doing that, right? Generally, they're trying to hit it relatively straight. And to do that, you want to be within a few degrees of 0, right? And then that's the fourth piece. And the last piece is having the speed along with that, right? So having some club head speed to go along with those things. Because if you have the speed, then you're going to be able to do that, right? Now, you might be thinking, well, you forgot about shaft lean or whatever. It's definitely a part of that, but if in order to hit the ground in the right spot, right, you're going to have some shaft lean, right? And shaft lean can also be variable, right? Some golfers play better with more or less shaft lean. Generally, the more club head speed you have, the more shaft lean you also want to have, and the less club head speed you have, the less shaft lean you want to have. Now, don't get me wrong. Nobody's going to be a very good golfer if we don't have any shaft lean at impact, right? And you're also, if you don't have some shaft lean, you're also not going to be able to hit the ground in the right spot, right? So imagine this. If I'm here and then I'm coming in and my club's bottoming, if I release the club early, my club's going to bottom out where the ball is. In order to make that good ground contact, right, I need the bottom of my swing arc to be on the target side of the ball, 3 or 4 inches. And in order for that to happen, there has to be shaft lean. So, you might be thinking, yeah, shaft lean's got to be in there. It is, but it's underlying, right? You kind of have to have the shaft lean in order to hit the ground in the right spot. Otherwise, you're not likely going to hit the ground in the right spot if you don't have the shaft leaning forward some at impact. So that's it, right? Same. You might think angle of attack, isn't that something? Well, again, if I'm not hitting the ground, that's a part of the ground contact. If I'm not hitting the ground in the right spot, then the angle of attack it isn't there either, right? So that's what it takes to hit a good golf shot. Everything that you do in your golf swing should be to improve that. And that's really what the Top Speed Golf System is. The Top Speed Golf System are the few things, the handful of things that Clay researched and analyzed that all the best players do within a certain range. And those things will help you to be able to achieve those 5 things that I just talked about. Hitting the ground in the right spot, hitting the ball in the middle of the face, having the club face pointing in the direction of the target, having the club head moving in the direction of the target at the moment of impact, and then having the speed behind it, right? The Top Speed Golf System allows you to achieve all of those things, right? Those are the technical things in the swing that make those things easier to achieve, right? So if we just want to talk about the stable fluid spine, right? If let's say that my spine wasn't stable, it was moving all over the place, like I was doing this, right? Well, it's going to be very, very hard to hit the ball in the middle of the face. It's going to be very, very difficult to hit the ground in the right spot. You're probably not going to have much speed, right, when you do that, because you're swaying your hips instead of turning, right? And if you don't turn, you're not going to be able to generate much club head speed, right? Your club path is going to be hard to control. Generally, when your body's leaning this way, you're going to tend to want to swing the club over the top, right? So, it's going to make it very, very difficult, right? If your head's moving all over the place. Now, the head can move, right? So let's talk about that real quick, because I know I mentioned earlier about how somebody's going to say, yeah, keep your head still. If you look at the best players in the world, typically what you're going to see when they start the swing, the head will move ever so slightly away from the target. That's putting pressure on the trail foot. As they get up to the top, the head will typically move down a little bit. And then as they start the downswing, the head will typically move forward and down a little bit. And then it will stay fairly steady in the middle of the downswing. It won't move very much, if at all. And then at impact, it will either stay very still, or some players will move kind of up and away as they come through contact. And then after contact, it releases up into that full finish, right? So that's kind of the head movement that's happening during the swing. It's not staying totally still, right? If you were to look at a tour player and draw a circle around their head, you would see it move, throughout the swing. Not a ton. It's not excessive, right? We don't want to be doing this, right? But that's generally what you're going to see. So, yeah, that's an example, right? If we're not turning, you're not going to be able to create much speed, right? And also to put another one in there, as far as what does it take to hit a good golf shot? Generally, I would say good rhythm and tempo as well, right? Having some good rhythm and tempo. It's you can have a swing where you're doing the entire top speed golf system, but golf is a game of precision, right? If I miss the center of the face, a quarter inch, it's going to be a vastly different golf shot, right? If my club face is 3 degrees open versus square, it's going to be a vastly different golf shot, right? So, when you're looking at your swing on video, you could be nailing the top speed golf system, but again, we're talking about degrees and quarters and millimeters that things can be off, and it will be a vastly different golf shot, right? That's not really going to be detectable on video, right? So rhythm and tempo, right, as far as that concerned, help you to control things a little bit better, right? And having the skill to control those things is also very, very important. All right, we got about 10 minutes if we have more questions. If that little discussion there had spurred any questions, let me know. All right. So Dana says TSP has tons of great chipping and pitching videos. These have helped a great deal in getting the ball close enough to have a reasonable chance at making the putt. I do as well or better chipping to the hole as I do on those long 30 to 40-foot putts. Awesome. Yeah. That's a good thing to have for sure. Glad to hear the videos have helped. Sounds like you're on the right track. Keep up the hard work. All right, got a few minutes left here. We got any more questions? If not, no big deal at all. So Mike B says, just really recently started making my trail hip and trail knee inside my toe line on the downswing. What a difference. Better forward hip clearance. Awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah. Sounds good, Mike. Thanks for sharing. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.